Joining me now is a man that's going to be a part of Dana White's Contender series coming here on August the 20th. Billy, appreciate the time. Of course, as we're talking here, we're still about 2 weeks out from this matchup. What's kind of the mindset right now for you as you're in that final preparations?
Same thing every camp, just getting the weight down, working my way closer to fight weight, and then just kind of sharpening certain things that we think are going to be valuable in the fight. But nothing different, man. Like, everyone keeps congratulating me and telling me how excited they are. It's just another fight. I still gotta get the job done and get my contract. But yeah, everything's the same, man.
Is that always kind of the mentality of like, man, it's just what I do? Whether it's in a cage in California, cage in Nevada, maybe you're training over in Thailand. Is that just kind of your mindset of like, it's just what I do?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And it wasn't always that way. I used to get really built up for these fights and really stoked and really just like pumped and all this shit. But somewhere along the way, I realized like, hey, I'm probably going to have 30 more of these. So if I keep making them this big, like daunting event, then who knows if I'll still want to do it. So somewhere along the way, I had to realize, just focus on the goal. You're going to do it again. So get this win, get another one, get another one, until we have the title,
Do you have a general idea of when that mindset change happened?
It's hard to say. I think I've always had it a little bit, even when I was an amateur, but I will say it really changed after the Peyton fight. I took that fight, and I think I was off for like 2 years. Maybe a year and a half or something like that. Took that fight, and it was funny because at that point I was kind of like, COVID had shut everyone down, so no one was really fighting unless you could get a fight in other states. And I was looking for fights in other states and everything, but couldn't get one. And I remember that was a switch before that fight. I was like, you know what, fuck it. There's not going to be a perfect opportunity. The next thing that you get offered, let's do it. Get the Peyton fight, makes sense on paper. Obviously, it doesn't go my way. But I remember after that fight, just kind of thinking like, one of the tools that Peyton's used for his success is activity. You know what I mean? Just fight. He fought the year he fought me. I think he fought 3 or 4 more times. And I was like, oh shit, that's kind of the key. Just staying active, staying busy. And I also feel way better when I'm fighting a lot.
You always hear athletes, no matter what we're talking about, combat sports or any other sports, they talk about, the lessons you learn. And unfortunately, more times than not, the lessons you learn are when you don't achieve the goal that you want. As you look back at that Peyton fight and you think about where you were at that point in your career and to where obviously you're at now, because you've been doing this thing for a long time, like, do you try to say, man, yeah, obviously it's awful you couldn't get the win, but do you try to look at, what, there's a reason that happened and I'm better because of it?
Yes and no. On one hand, like, it did change my outlook, change my perspective a little bit, but at the same time, like, I remember in the back, I sat down and I'm crying. And that, to be honest, that fight fucked me up for a long time. I don't know if I can cuss on this. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that fight really messed me up. And I was just like, I don't want to say depressed because that's like a actual clinical problem. But it damn near, you know what I mean? Like, I just didn't want to, it was the first and last thing I thought about every single day was that fight. So it definitely, I think that just like, of course that's going to change your perspective. You know what I mean? My whole life I was planning on being an undefeated UFC champion. And then I have to, my whole life, right? Since I was 12 years old. And then I can't say the first part anymore. I can't say undefeated. You know what I mean? I remember my boy Benito Lopez said that after he took his first loss. And it always kind of stuck with me. And then when I first sat down, we sit down in the back, I'm crying, my face is all swollen. And my coach Lino goes, he's like, what the fuck are you crying for? He's like, are you going to quit? Are you done? Is this your last one? And it like pissed me off. I was like, no, it's not my fucking last one, And he's like, then shut up, quit crying, on to the next. You know what I mean? And I was like, all right, I kind of get what you're saying. But him and Feely are the ones that stopped it. So in my head, I was just about to knock Peyton out.
And of course, you've been on a roll, since then. Like, as you think about this 4-fight winning streak, is there one fight that sticks out to you more than the others just because of, implementing what you wanted to implement on fight night?
Not really. Look, every fight I've had has led to this moment. The whole goal, and I always assumed I was going to get a Contender Series shot because I'm exciting. And I just straight up, I wouldn't want to do Ultimate Fighter 6 weeks in a house with a bunch of motherfuckers I can't stand, like making weight as much as those guys do. Obviously, it's usually up a weight class, but still, that just didn't seem like my path. But yeah, every fight has been gearing for this one, and that's the funny part is like you could say that my whole life has led up to this moment. It's what a lot of people are saying, but that's literally every fight. Like, you don't get to the Contender Series without winning the fight before, the fight before, the fight before. You know what I mean? So yeah, I was able to string together some wins. I have a least favorite outing. That was my last one. Just because he talked a lot of shit, said he was going to strike with me, and then just kind of moved around the cage the whole time, didn't want to engage, and so I ended up having to wrestle. And one of the things, like, this pisses me off every time I think about it. There, in his pre-fight interview with Corey, he was saying, when guys say they'll strike with me, they start shooting real quick, and then I had to take him down in the third. But it was because he wasn't striking with me, he wasn't engaging. So that fight was frustrating for sure. I thought it was honestly kind of an easy fight, and maybe that's why it was a little frustrating. But I don't think there will be any of those thoughts after this fight.
I mean, it's been 11 years you've been in this game since your amateur debut. Like, how do you describe these 11 years?
Well, I was doing Muay Thai even before that. My amateur MMA debut was 11 years ago. But it's weird, man. Like, the first boxing class, the first class I ever took was a boxing class. Second class I ever took was a Muay Thai class. And from the first class, I knew, I was like, okay, I'm going to be doing this for the rest of my life. Like, it was just like set in stone. The second I did it, there was no doubt in my mind. I went home and probably shadow boxed for 3 hours, like dog shit shadow boxing, but I was just so stoked on it. Yeah, I'm really just fortunate, man. Like there's a lot of, I've seen so many, and I still kind of do, but I used to more. So I like take pride in watching guys quit. Like, what? Oh, I trained with that guy 5 years ago, and now he ain't doing shit. Like, maybe he won a round against me, and now he's hung him up. He's working at the office. You know what I mean? Kind of take a little pride in that, just that I've stuck it out. But like I said, it wasn't really a choice. Like, I don't know. Like Andre Ward says, it's in me. It's not on me.
Mm-hmm. And now you got Cody here. He's an international fighter, just like yourself. Suffered a loss early on in his career to someone currently in the UFC, that being 𝗍𝗶𝗺𝗀. He's coming off a title win as well. What's kind of, as you broke him down and you kind of what's that scouting report in your mind when you hear that name?
Like, I gotta be honest. Because on one hand, like, I know he's going to be game. I know he's ready to fight. I know that he really believes, I was watching an interview with him, and he really believes that the same thing I do, that he was put on this world to fight and get into the UFC and win a UFC championship. So you can't take anybody like that lightly. Like, somebody that has that real, like, true self-belief, you got to take him seriously. But, I mean, he lost to 𝗍𝗏, who's really a 25er. He came up to 35 on short notice. And 𝗍𝗏's good, man. 𝗍𝗏's a great fighter, but I think if you put me in there with 𝗍𝗏, I smoke him within 2 rounds. You know what I mean? I think if you put Peyton with 𝗍𝗏, I think Peyton smokes him within 2 rounds. So it is what it is. He's a tough guy. He's not coming to lose. I'm gonna have to play it smart. Like, it's not wise to just brawl. You know what I mean? As much as this is like the Contender Series and you want to have an exciting outing. Yeah. You want it to be exciting on your terms and not theirs, So it's going to be a fun fight. I'm expecting like a tough, gritty fight. I'm going to get a finish. It might not come till the very end of the 3rd round, but it'll come.
Is it a balancing act for you on fight night of, obviously you're going out there, you're trying to get the finish, you're trying to put yourself in the best position, but also like you also have that mindset of like, okay, I can't get over aggressive and potentially, put a hole out there. I mean, is it a thin line for you?
I have a pretty good, I'm pretty good at like sensing when a guy's done, so I'll try to break them down. That's one of my biggest attributes is I just try to break guys down, and I don't rush the finish. But if it presents itself, I'll know when it's there. And then yeah, I mean, I guess it is a balancing act, but it's one of those things, like you said, I've been doing this thing for so long, and so is Cody. Like he's been fighting. I think he's a little younger than me, but he started younger as well. But who gives a fuck, man? We're going to get in a cage, we're going to fight, and I'm going to get a contract. And this is a type of fight where, I'll get my hand raised and Dana might give us both contracts just because it's that type of matchup stylistically.
I think one of the interesting things about the Contender Series is there is that mindset of knowing, hey, if I go out there and put on an entertaining fight, I got a great chance of signing, but also that mindset of like, if the fight isn't exciting, and sometimes that could be, it relates to your opponent. Maybe your opponent doesn't want to engage. I mean, is the mindset for you for this fight different because of just understanding that I know what a win equals?
Two things. One, no, it's not different, because if you've watched me fight before, like any of my fights, including the Peyton one, if that fight was on Contender Series, I would have got a contract. So it's not something I have to change. What I do, I think he's probably thinking more along those lines. Again, he's a pretty exciting kid, but he's not as exciting as me. So that's, if anything, he's going to be thinking about that. I'm going to go out there and do what I do. Obviously, we're preparing for certain tendencies that he has. He's probably doing the same for me. But yeah, I'm really not worried about that at all. And like I said, that's something that he's going to be concerned with. But there's a reason that we're on Contender Series.
Yeah.
It's funny. I had a different opponent. This is the second thing I was going to say. I had a different opponent initially, and he couldn't get out of the contract. But that fight, looking at the matchup, I was like, damn, it was going to be like my last one, where this guy's going to try to stay on the outside. He's not going to want to engage. And I'm like, I'm going to beat him. Like, I wasn't concerned that I was going to lose. I was just concerned that he wasn't going to want to engage with me and give me my contract. You know what I mean? But Cody, I don't think Cody is going to have that same style. He's had a lot of boxing fights. He likes to get in the pocket and really exchange. But I don't think I think I'm the best in the world at sitting in the pocket, or I could pick you apart from the outside, You
mentioned one of the words you said there, you talked about tendencies, and coming from a football world, we talk about not just tendencies of what our opponents do, but tendencies of what we do. Do you do a lot of that in the training room, of just going there and saying, you know what, hey, let me go back and look at that last fight, and almost you looking at it from your opponent's perspective, and maybe going, man, am I showing tendencies on film?
Yeah, for sure. That's something that I think about a lot, because the higher level the fight is, right, whether it's the UFC or any other big promotion, like there's tape on your guy, but there's also tape on you. And I've been fighting since I was 16, so there's a lot of tape on me. When I watch opponents, I kind of stick to, like with Cody, he has one loss, so it's good to learn how he loses. But I usually only stick to the most recent one, and so I do that with myself. I watch my fights more than I watch anybody's fights, and I'll look for flaws. I'll look for where I got hit. I'll look for things that even things I have success with. Like, okay, he's going to be looking for that. You know what I mean? Obviously, I throw a lot of low kicks. He's going to be expecting me to low kick. I'm still going to kick his leg. It's just I might have to disguise it a little bit. You know what I mean?
And, obviously there'll be a Contender Series the week before. Are you going to be tuning in to week one just to maybe see if maybe there's a message that gets sent by Dana to the fighters on the following week?
I wasn't even really thinking about it, but that's a good point. You know what I mean? Like, get comfortable there. I've been out to Vegas a couple times since I got the call, just to kind of get familiar with the PI. You know, I'm gonna spend the rest of my career in the UFC, so I want to know what I'm getting myself into. But yeah, that's a pretty good idea. Watch. I wasn't gonna watch the first season because I don't really know anybody on there besides one dude. But the week after me, my buddy Jack Duffy's fighting, and so I'm gonna stay out that whole week, help him get ready for his. You know, probably go do some training at the PI while I'm there, and then watch my boy get a contract a week after I do. It's gonna be a good couple of weeks.
Do you think it's going to be an odd environment for you? Because obviously it's not, you know, it's not full of fans. You know, it's a Tuesday afternoon in Las Vegas when you're fighting. Yeah. I mean, have you thought about just like what the environment's going to be like and how different it'll be in comparison to other fights you've had?
It'll be different for sure, but I'm ready for it. Like it is what it is. I've known since Contender Series has been out, it's on Tuesday. You know what I mean? Again, like I said earlier, I've always kind of expected that this was my path. I would have liked to get like a short notice call, like, hey, we need a 35er, can you make it? You know what I mean? But that's not a very common occurrence in the UFC. So I figured this would be my path. It's nothing. I prefer a crowd for sure. Like I love having a crowd there, but I don't think it's going to change the way I fight or what I do. It'll be weird, I'm sure. I've talked to a couple guys. I talked to Cody 𝗉𝗄𝗃. I talked to Danny Castillo, like some guys that have fought or cornered in the Apex, and just kind of got their thoughts on it. And one thing that Cody told me, he's like, dude, it's a small building, so it's damn near just as loud as a sold out T-Mobile. And he's a guy that's fought in both. You know what I mean? He fought COVID when there was nobody fighting. So yeah, I got a lot of people looking out for me, and I'm prepared. It's weird. It's a Tuesday night. My fight's going to be, as of right now, it looks like I'm the first on the card. I'm going to start at 4:00. Kind of weird, but doesn't matter. You know what I mean?
Do you almost like kind of prefer that? Because then you know, okay, hey, I know exactly who I'm fighting. I'm not waiting around all night. You know, is it kind of like one of those,
absolutely.
It's a good and bad thing. Like, obviously, at the end of the day, you want to be the last guy that makes the walk, the main event. That's the goal of every fighter.
Yeah.
But then there's
that's for the UFC. For the UFC, for sure. I want to be the main every time. You know what I mean? Obviously, that's not how it works. But for this, yeah, it's great. I'm like, oh, cool. I get to get my shit out of the way, chill in the back until Dana gives me my contract. It's going to be great. I definitely prefer. And even like, I would always tell promoters, you know, when I'm fighting, like, hey, what's the lineup? You know, like, oh, you should put me in the beginning of the main. Just trying to weasel my way in. That was actually something that I don't think it really affected the fight, but it was a weird kind of event when I fought Peyton. Like the whole time they were telling me, because I sold a shit ton of tickets. They're like, oh, you're gonna be the co-main. You're gonna be the co-main. I'm like, hell yeah, the co-main. And then the second fight finishes, and they're like, all right, Billy, you're up. And I'm like, y'all told me just now that I was a co-main. They're like, yeah, CSAC said no. I'm like, what are you talking about? You know?
Oh, wow.
So, and then they're like, do you want to go? And then they had an intermission. And it's a buddy of mine, but a buddy of mine was supposed to fight. He ended up not fighting. And so he gets in the cage. He gives this long-ass spiel about, I'm like, bro, can you just let me get in the cage and fight this guy? Like, it was just an awkward intermission, like a weird turn of events right before the fight.
I'll never forget when Steve Garcia was fighting in Bellator in New Mexico. That's where he's from. Mm-hmm. And I get to the venue, and there's a bunch of fans outside. I mean, and like the doors are not open for like another 3 or 4 hours. And I see one of the Bellator PR people, and I go, who's all these people? And they go, oh, that's Steve Garcia's fan base. They're picking up their tickets. Mm-hmm. I go, okay. She goes, yeah, he was the first fight of the night. He's now on after the main card.
Oh, yeah. Bellator used to do, I don't know if they still do that, but they were doing that. I had a buddy that fought on Bellator, and it was the same situation. Like, he thought he was going to be, like, early on the prelims, and then the fights ran late or advertising ran late, and then he fought at, like, midnight. Like, after the main event. It wasn't, they cut all the streaming off. It wasn't televised. Damn, that would suck.
Oh, I tell people, like, on this regional scene, it's not hard to figure out who sells tickets.
Oh, yeah.
They're the ones fighting last. Because you talk to a bunch of regional promoters, and they'll go, our big fear is that ticket seller who maybe put 100 people in the building If we have him second, third fight of the night, do all of his fans just leave? And I've seen it happen. It happens more than people realize.
It happened at the Peyton fight. Like that, the majority of that crowd was there for me. My fight's over. Everyone was all bummed out. They all went home. Like if you watch the fights, if you watch the replay during my fight, packed crowd. You watch the fights after mine, it's like there's a good amount of people, but like a fraction of what was there during mine, you know?
Yeah, I mean, look, I love going to regional MMA, primarily because I just like to, I people watch. Yeah. And the things.
Oh yeah, that's a great place to do.
I was calling fights down in Miami a couple weeks ago, and there was one point where these guys that were like in the VIP area right behind where we were doing the play-by-play, and they just start talking craziness. And I'm trying not to laugh on air because in my head, I am dying laughing. Dude,
I have my boy, we call him Special Ed Fred. He's not Special Ed, but I was supposed to fight in March, and then I had to get an operation on my eye, so I had to pull out. And my homie Fred already bought the tickets, and he's like notorious for when I fought in November, he almost fought my opponent's dad in the stands. Like he just chirps the whole time. And then so we go to the fight that I was supposed to fight on in March, and I'm just there to watch, you know, like be in the crowd. I'm bummed out I can't fight. And I'm sitting next to 𝗶𝗵𝐺, and I hear somebody go, "Billy would have beat your ass." I'm like, bro, I'm not even fighting. I look up, it's my boy Fred just going crazy. Yeah, that's one thing that I'm gonna miss is just having 150 people there to support, you know. But you know, Dana said that they're gonna stop throwing fights at the Apex pretty soon, and because he wants to go to more arenas, travel more, and it's a Sacramento card's long overdue. We have Golden One Center. It's a beautiful stadium. Mm-hmm. Like I don't see any reason why that's not in the cards, at least sometime next year.
Yeah, you would have to imagine that. But we do look forward to seeing this matchup here, August 20th, DWCS Contender Series. Billy, I appreciate time. Anything else you want to leave the people who are checking you out, maybe get what you want them to know about you?
Not really. If watch the fight, August 20th, Tuesday. If you like me, follow me on Instagram, whatever. If you don't, I don't really care. You know, you're going to have to deal with me for a long time in the UFC. So